Princess Elena had never felt so nervous in her entire life. Today was the day she would officially become the heir to the throne of Astoria. The grand ceremony hall was filled with hundreds of nobles, diplomats, and citizens who had come to witness this historic moment. Golden banners hung from the tall windows, and the morning sunlight made the marble floors shine like mirrors. She stood in her private chamber, looking at herself in the ornate mirror. Her coronation dress was made of the finest silk, decorated with tiny pearls and silver threads that sparkled with every movement. The royal crown sat perfectly on her dark hair, which had been styled in elaborate braids by the palace's best hairdressers. Despite looking every bit like a future queen, Elena's hands were shaking. "You look beautiful, my dear," said Lady Margaret, her trusted advisor and childhood companion. The older woman had been like a mother to Elena since the princess was just 5 years old. "Your father would be so proud." Elena's heart ached at the mention of her father, King Alexander, who had passed away 3 months ago from a sudden illness. The kingdom had been in mourning, and now the responsibility of ruling fell entirely on her 22-year-old shoulders. She had been preparing for this moment her whole life, but nothing could have prepared her for the overwhelming weight of actually becoming queen. "I don't know if I can do this, Margaret," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. "What if I make the wrong decisions? What if the people don't accept me? What if I'm not strong enough?" Lady Margaret walked over and gently placed her hands on Elena's shoulders. "My child, your father chose you as his heir because he saw something special in you. You have his wisdom, your mother's compassion, and a strength that is entirely your own. The people of Astoria love you already." A soft knock on the door interrupted their conversation. "Your Highness, it's time," announced Captain Rodriguez, the head of the Royal Guard. Elena took a deep breath and walked toward the door. As she stepped into the corridor, she was joined by her royal procession. 12 guards in their finest uniforms, 6 ladies-in-waiting carrying her train, and the royal musicians playing a ceremonial march. The sound of trumpets echoed through the palace halls as they made their way to the throne room. The massive wooden doors of the throne room slowly opened, and Elena was greeted by a sea of faces. Every seat in the grand hall was occupied, and people were standing along the walls. The sound of hundreds of people rising to their feet created a thunderous echo that seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace. Elena began her slow walk down the long red carpet that led to the golden throne. With each step, she could feel the weight of 1,000 expectations pressing down on her. She smiled and nodded to familiar faces in the crowd, but inside, her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. Halfway down the aisle, she spotted Prince Marcus standing with the other foreign dignitaries. He was the crown prince of the neighboring kingdom of Valdris, and they had known each other since childhood. Their kingdoms had always been allies, and over the years, Elena and Marcus had developed a deep friendship that had recently blossomed into something more meaningful. Marcus was tall and handsome, with kind brown eyes and a warm smile that always made Elena feel safe. He was wearing his formal royal uniform, decorated with medals and honors from his own kingdom. When their eyes met, he gave her an encouraging nod that seemed to say, "You can do this." Elena continued her walk toward the throne, where Archbishop Thomas was waiting to perform the coronation ceremony. The ancient throne had been carved from a single piece of white marble over 500 years ago, and 23 kings and queens had sat upon it before her. Today, she would become the 24th ruler of Astoria. "People of Astoria," the Archbishop's voice boomed across the silent hall. "We gather today to witness the coronation of Princess Elena, who will take her rightful place as our beloved queen." Elena knelt before the throne as tradition demanded. The Archbishop began reading from the ancient scrolls, reciting the sacred vows that every ruler of Astoria had taken for centuries. The words seemed to blur together as Elena's mind raced with thoughts of her father, her responsibilities, and the enormous task ahead of her. "Do you, Princess Elena, solemnly swear to protect and serve the people of Astoria with wisdom, justice, and compassion?" asked the Archbishop. "I do," Elena replied, her voice strong despite the turmoil in her heart. "Do you promise to uphold the laws of our land and defend our kingdom against all threats?" "I do," she said again, feeling the weight of each word. The Archbishop lifted the Queen's crown, a magnificent piece made of gold and diamonds that had been in the royal family for generations. As he slowly lowered it toward Elena's head, the entire room held its breath in anticipation. But just as the crown was about to touch her hair, Elena felt the world begin to spin around her. The faces in the crowd became blurry, the sounds in the room grew distant, and her legs suddenly felt like they could no longer support her body. The overwhelming stress of the past 3 months, combined with the enormous pressure of this moment, finally caught up with her. The last thing Elena remembered was seeing Prince Marcus's concerned face pushing through the crowd toward her, his arms reaching out as everything faded to black. Time seemed to move in slow motion as Elena's body began to collapse. The heavy coronation crown slipped from the Archbishop's hands and clattered loudly against the marble steps of the throne. Gasps and cries of alarm filled the grand hall as hundreds of witnesses watched their future queen fall. Prince Marcus didn't hesitate for even a second. He pushed past the shocked nobles and diplomats, his military training taking over as he moved with lightning speed toward the throne. Just as Elena's unconscious form was about to hit the cold marble floor, Marcus caught her in his strong arms, cradling her against his chest. "Elena," he whispered urgently, his voice filled with worry as he looked down at her pale face. Her elaborate hairstyle had come undone, and dark strands of hair fell across her forehead. The beautiful coronation dress spread around them like a pool of silk and pearls. The entire throne room erupted into chaos. Nobles stood from their seats, some rushing forward to help while others backed away in confusion. The Archbishop dropped to his knees beside Marcus, his wrinkled face creased with concern. Royal guards formed a protective circle around them, unsure of what to do in such an unprecedented situation. "Someone call the royal physician immediately," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his royal training. His heart was pounding as he felt for Elena's pulse, relieved to find it steady but weak. Lady Margaret pushed through the crowd, her usual composed demeanor shattered by seeing Elena unconscious. "Oh, my dear child," she cried, kneeling beside Marcus. "She's been under so much pressure these past months. She barely eats, barely sleeps. I tried to tell her to rest, but she insisted on preparing for today." Dr. Harrison, the palace physician, arrived within minutes, his medical bag in hand. He was an elderly man with silver hair who had served the royal family for over 30 years. He had delivered Elena when she was born and had treated her through every childhood illness. "Please give her some air," Dr. Harrison said calmly, though Marcus could see the worry in the old doctor's eyes. "Your Highness, can you carry her to the royal chambers? She needs to be somewhere quiet and comfortable." Marcus lifted Elena effortlessly, holding her as carefully as if she were made of the finest crystal. Her head rested against his shoulder, and he could feel her shallow breathing against his neck. As he carried her through the crowd, he heard whispers and murmurs following them. "Is the princess dying?" someone asked in a frightened voice. "What will happen to the kingdom now?" another person wondered aloud. "Perhaps this is a sign that she's not ready to rule," whispered a skeptical noble. Marcus's jaw tightened at the last comment, but he kept walking. He knew Elena better than anyone, and he understood the incredible burden she had been carrying. Losing her father, preparing to become queen, managing the kingdom's affairs during the transition period. It was enough to overwhelm anyone. regardless of their strength or preparation. The royal chambers were a welcome relief from the chaos of the throne room. Marcus gently placed Elena on her bed, which was covered with soft blue silk sheets that matched her eyes. Dr. Harrison immediately began his examination, checking her pulse, breathing, and temperature. "She's exhausted," the doctor concluded after several minutes. "Her body simply couldn't handle the stress any longer. She needs rest, proper nutrition, and time to recover. The fainting spell was her body's way of forcing her to stop and take care of herself." Marcus pulled a chair close to Elena's bedside and sat down, never taking his eyes off her peaceful face. "How long before she wakes up?" he asked. "It could be a few hours, or it might be tomorrow morning," Dr. Harrison replied honestly. "Her body will wake up when it's ready. In the meantime, we need to make sure she stays hydrated and comfortable." Lady Margaret entered the room carrying a basin of cool water and clean cloths. "The Archbishop has postponed the coronation indefinitely," she informed them. "The guests have been asked to return to their homes and await further announcement." Marcus nodded, though his attention remained focused on Elena. He gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face, his touch as light as a feather. "She's been trying so hard to be perfect," he murmured. "She thinks she has to prove herself worthy of the crown, but she doesn't realize that she already is." "You care for her very much?" Lady Margaret observed, noticing the tender way Marcus was looking at Elena. "I love her," Marcus admitted without hesitation. "I've loved her for years, but I never told her because I didn't want to complicate her life or make her feel pressured. She had enough to worry about with preparing to become queen." As the hours passed, Marcus refused to leave Elena's side. He sent word to his own kingdom, explaining the situation and asking for their patience. Servants brought him food and drink, but he barely touched anything. His entire world had narrowed down to this room and the sleeping princess before him. Late in the evening, Elena's eyelids began to flutter. Marcus immediately leaned forward, taking her hand gently in his. "Elena, can you hear me?" Elena's eyes opened slowly, and she looked around in confusion before focusing on Marcus's worried face. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "What happened? Where am I?" "You're in your chambers," he explained softly. "You fainted during the coronation ceremony. Do you remember?" The events of the day came flooding back to Elena, and she closed her eyes in embarrassment. "Oh no," she groaned. "I ruined everything. The whole kingdom was watching, and I collapsed like a weak child. They'll never respect me as their queen now." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Elena, listen to me. You didn't ruin anything. You're human, and humans have limits. You've been pushing yourself beyond those limits for months, trying to be everything to everyone." Elena tried to sit up, but Marcus gently pressed her back down onto the pillows. "You need to rest," he insisted. "The kingdom can wait another day or two. Your health is more important than any ceremony." "But the nobles, the people, what must they think of me?" Elena asked, tears forming in her eyes. "They think you're brave for accepting such enormous responsibility at a young age," Marcus replied firmly. "They think you're dedicated for working so hard to prepare. And they think you're wise for having people around you who care enough to make sure you take care of yourself." Dr. Harrison returned to check on Elena, and after confirming that she was recovering well, he prescribed several days of complete rest. "No royal duties, no meetings, no ceremonies," he ordered. "Just sleep, good food, and gentle activities until your strength returns." As the doctor left, Marcus remained by Elena's bedside. The princess looked up at him with gratitude shining in her tired eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for catching me, for staying with me, for everything." Marcus smiled down at her, his heart full of love and protectiveness. "I'll always catch you when you fall, Elena, and I'll always be here when you need me." 3 days had passed since the interrupted coronation, and Elena was finally feeling like herself again. The color had returned to her cheeks, her appetite was back, and most importantly, her confidence was slowly rebuilding. Marcus had barely left her side during her recovery, and their friendship had deepened into something beautiful and meaningful. On the morning of the 4th day, Elena sat in her private garden with Marcus, enjoying the peaceful sound of the fountain and the sweet fragrance of blooming roses. She was wearing a simple blue dress instead of her formal royal attire, and her hair fell freely around her shoulders. For the first time in months, she looked relaxed and genuinely happy. "I've been thinking about what happened," Elena said, watching a butterfly dance among the flowers. "Maybe it was exactly what I needed. I was so focused on being perfect that I forgot to be human." Marcus smiled at her wisdom. "Your father used to say that the best rulers are those who understand their own limitations and aren't afraid to ask for help when they need it." "Did he really say that?" Elena asked, surprised. "He did. We had a long conversation about leadership during my last visit here, about 6 months before he became ill. He told me that he wasn't worried about your ability to rule because you had something many rulers lack: genuine compassion and the wisdom to know that you don't have to carry every burden alone." Elena felt tears of gratitude fill her eyes. Hearing her father's words through Marcus gave her more confidence than any amount of preparation or study ever could. Lady Margaret appeared at the garden entrance, looking much more cheerful than she had in recent days. "Your Highness, there are some people here who would like to see you." Elena looked puzzled. "I'm not receiving official visitors yet, Margaret. Dr. Harrison said I need another day of rest." "These aren't official visitors," Lady Margaret said with a mysterious smile. "They're friends who heard about what happened and wanted to check on you." Elena and Marcus followed her through the palace corridors to a smaller reception room. When the doors opened, Elena gasped in surprise and delight. The room was filled with people she had known and loved throughout her life: her childhood tutor, the head gardener who had taught her about flowers, the cook who always made her favorite cookies, several young nobles who had grown up with her, and even some common citizens from the village who had known her since she was a little girl. "We heard you weren't feeling well, Princess," said Mrs. Thompson, the elderly baker from the village. "So we thought we'd bring you some of your favorite treats to help you feel better." The table was covered with homemade bread, cookies, fresh fruit, and flowers picked from various gardens throughout the kingdom. Elena was overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness and love that filled the room. "You didn't have to do this," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'm so grateful that you did." "Princess Elena," spoke up James, a young man about her age who worked in the palace stables, "we all heard what happened at the coronation, and we wanted you to know that it doesn't change how we feel about you. You've always been kind to all of us, regardless of our station in life. That's what makes a good queen, not whether you can stand through a long ceremony." The others nodded in agreement, and Elena realized something profound. These people didn't see her fainting as a sign of weakness. They saw it as proof that she was human, just like them. It made her more relatable, not less worthy of respect. "When my little daughter gets scared or overwhelmed, I hold her until she feels better," said Maria, one of the palace seamstresses. "That's what Prince Marcus did for you, and it showed us that even princesses need someone to catch them when they fall. There's no shame in that." Elena looked over at Marcus, who was standing quietly beside her with a gentle smile on his face. In that moment, she understood that her feelings for him had grown far beyond friendship. He hadn't just caught her body when she fainted, he had been catching her heart little by little for years. After the visitors left, Elena asked Marcus to walk with her to the throne room. The great hall was empty now, but sunlight streamed through the tall windows, making the golden throne shimmer beautifully. "I want to do the coronation again," Elena announced suddenly. "But not the way it was planned before." Marcus looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean I want it to be real, not just a formal ceremony for dignitaries and nobles. I want the people who just visited us to be there. I want Mrs. Thompson and James and Maria and all the others who truly know me and care about me. I want it to be a celebration of community, not just a display of power." Marcus's eyes lit up with admiration. "That sounds perfect." "It sounds like you." Elena walked up the steps to the throne and sat down for the first time. The marble felt cool beneath her hands as she gripped the armrests. "It feels different than I expected," she mused, "less intimidating and more purposeful." "Because now you understand what it really means," Marcus said, climbing the steps to stand beside her. "It's not about being perfect or proving yourself. It's about serving people you love." Elena stood up and turned to face Marcus. They were alone in the vast throne room, and she felt a courage she had never experienced before. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" he asked, stepping closer to her. "When I was falling and you caught me, it wasn't just my body that you saved. You've been catching me in so many ways for so long, and I was too afraid to admit how I felt about you. I love you, Marcus, not just as a friend or an ally between our kingdoms, but truly and completely." Marcus's face broke into a radiant smile as he reached out to take her hands. "Elena, I've been in love with you for years. I was waiting for the right time to tell you, but I was afraid of adding pressure to your life." "The right time is now," Elena said softly. "Because I finally understand that being queen doesn't mean I have to be alone or that I have to be perfect. It means I get to build something beautiful with people I love, for people I care about." Marcus cupped her face gently in his hands and leaned down to kiss her. It was a soft, sweet kiss filled with years of friendship, respect, and love. When they broke apart, Elena felt more ready to rule than she ever had before. 2 weeks later, the coronation took place again. This time, the throne room was filled with a mixture of nobles and common people, diplomats and farmers, wealthy merchants and humble servants. When the archbishop placed the crown on Elena's head, she felt no fear or overwhelming pressure, only joy and determination. Prince Marcus stood in the front row wearing the formal uniform of Valdris, but with a new addition, an engagement ring on his finger that matched the one Elena wore beneath her royal gloves. Their kingdoms would be united not just in alliance, but in love. As Queen Elena stood before her people for the first time, she remembered the moment she had fainted and how Marcus had caught her. She understood now that true strength wasn't about never falling. It was about having people who loved you enough to catch you when you did, and about being brave enough to catch others in return. The crown felt perfect on her head, not because it was heavy with gold and jewels, but because it was light with love, support, and genuine purpose. Queen Elena's reign had begun, and she knew that with Marcus by her side and her people's love in her heart, she would never fall again.